Hey everybody, it's Paul Harris with Global Recruiters of Blackhawk here in sunny California. How are you doing? I hope you're doing well. As you may know, I run an executive search firm that specializes in the telecom infrastructure space. And last week was the granddaddy of all trade shows, so in case you missed it, in the very few minutes, I'm going to do my best to make sure that I make you feel like you were there and get you ramped up on what happened and what people were talking about and the key themes of, number one, how much money is being spent in the telecom infrastructure space and where it's going to be spent. Number two is the announcements from the tier one wireless carriers, the OEM vendors, handset vendors, etc. And then number three, some of the keynote speeches like Ajit Pai from the FCC and Lurie from regarding talking about smart cities, etc. And stuff regarding AR, VR, AI, robotics, security, etc. So let's get right to it. So Mobile World Congress, Barcelona, Spain. This is a huge trade show, right? 100,000 people, 2,300 exhibitors, 200 countries, and 320 speakers. So the theme of it was creating a better future. They had the 4YFN, theme was there as well. Like, so the 4 years from now, which basically connects the money folks with the startup type of people. So very, very cool for getting stuff going and innovation and technology, etc. So let's get right to the announcements. So the announcements, first of all, biggest for me and potentially for you as well, how much money is being spent. So Deutsche Bank talked about, announced that in 2018, the big four wireless carriers in the United States are going to be, have their CapEx 14% above last year for a total of $30.5 billion. So that's the largest investment since 2014. And I think you would agree with me that 2014 was an awesome year. And it, of course, carried over in 2015. So obviously, I think 2018 and 2019 are going to be even better. Where's the money going to be spent? Obviously, 5G. A lot of densification for small cell, a lot of fiber to the home, a lot of fiber backhaul, etc. And then of course some 4G, LTE build out, and then of course 5G as well. AT&T announced that they are going to be spending $25 billion in 2018. So they're typically, what, 18 to 21-ish or so. So 25, obviously a large increase, and a lot of that is due to them winning FirstNet and then also the tax reform. We've all read that as well. Verizon, they're going to be doing pretty much what they normally do. They kind of pride themselves on not going high and low, just kind of keep steady. So of course tax reform, they'll take it and enjoy it, I'm quite sure, but it's not really going to affect their spend. T-Mobile announced aggressive plans to launch 5G in 30 cities next year. Sprint announced using massive MIMO to launch in 6 markets this year, kind of their massive MIMO, their kind of 5G roadmap. DAS vendors such as Zenwave and GSMA and Solid and Verizon, etc., they are talking about making the shift over to a more virtualized world and helping to penetrate into the enterprise space as well. The Nokia and Vodafone announcement about building a 4G network on the moon. I did not make that up. You guys have probably read that by now. Very cool stuff. I can't wait to see what happens. Let's switch from announcements to the keynotes. So Ajit Pai, so the FCC chairman, he talked about regulatory issues and the kind of impediments to small cell and DAS deployments, impediments to 5G adoption. He had a quote, which I'll try to get it relatively close, but it's basically, we will continue to have a free and open internet, and obviously talking about net neutrality. And then he announced the auction in the United States of the 28 gigahertz spectrum and the 24 gigahertz spectrum as well. So that should be, I think, November, he said. Brendan Carr, who is the FCC commissioner, are you ready for this statistic? Are you ready? $275 billion is going to be needed to deploy 5G. Does that make you happy? That makes me very happy. 3 million jobs will be created, and it will add $500 billion, so $500 billion in GDP to our gross domestic product. So I love it. What does Formula One racing have to do with Mobile World Congress? Well, the answer is a ton. As a matter of fact, they had an entire venue set aside for Formula One racing. And Fernando Alonso, who's a two-time world champion, he was actually a keynote speaker, and he talked about how the Formula One racing world is kind of working very, very closely with the 5G world because of how important a low latency network is, right? When you're going 200 miles an hour, a low latency network is very, very critical in terms of getting feedback back to the pit crew and et cetera like that, and how they have sensors on the, the wheels and the steering wheel and the brakes and, all the different components of the technology and the engine, etc. So very, very cool stuff. Let me see. Where else was I going to talk about? Okay. Oh yeah, 5G use cases and build plans. So Börje Ekholm, for the CEO of Ericsson, he talked about how Ericsson already has commercial 5G contracts for 2018 deliveries, and how North America and Northeast Asia are driving 5G, and how maybe Europe needs to kind of get with the program and get going a little bit faster. Sandra Rivera from Intel talked about 5G at the Olympics. Right, so not only is Intel all behind supporting 5G trials, but they actually built and installed a 3,800 terabyte network at the Olympics. And talk about use cases. Are you ready for this one? So you guys probably all watch the Olympics like me, and you see these snowboarders and whatnot, and these incredible athletes going ridiculously high in the half pipe, right? Shaun White and Chloe Kim and etc. And we watch them go up, and the announcers say, "Oh my gosh, Shaun White was 20 feet above the lip of the half pipe, and Chloe Kim was 17 feet," or whatever the statistics were. And I'm thinking, well, how do they know? I mean, I could tell they're really high up there, but come on, how do they know? The answer is they have 5G sensors on their ankles, so when they're going up there and their head's down here and their feet are up there, they're inverted. It literally sends a message to the system saying this is exactly how high they are above the pipe. Very, very cool stuff. So they talk a lot of course, with 5G, a lot of AR, VR, AI, robotics, drones, and security technologies like blockchain were talked about as well. Here's a big one, smart cities. Of course, a huge one, smart cities, and one of our perennial favorites in terms of just kind of being a great speaker. So Glenn Lurie, the former CEO of AT&T Mobility, he's now the CEO of Synchronous, and he talked about smart cities being the next big thing, and how connected cars are going to be the lifeblood of the smart cities. So very cool. And he talked about some use cases and how it's more about use cases, not so much about just speed and bandwidth. All right. So those are the big kind of keynotes in the wireless infrastructure world, telecom infrastructure world. Day 3 kind of switched over to more artificial intelligence, and there were a couple things I wanted to mention. The CEO for Robotics, Rand Krauss, he talked about how robotics are coming sooner, faster, etc. than autonomous vehicles, and how the low latency 5G wireless infrastructure is obviously needed to make his world happen. This is an interesting one. Oren Jacob he was CEO of Pullstring. He talked about AI-powered voice assistants, right, from Apple, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, etc., and how they have kind of stepped in the middle between the relationship between, so here's a customer with a smartphone and here's the carrier, and that used to be the relationship, and now these AI assistants have kind of stepped right in the middle of that relationship, and how the carriers may want to just kind of take note of that and maybe kind of insert themselves back in the middle of those relationships. Kind of interesting. So you guys, those are the big announcements. I do want to just kind of probably wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't talk at least a little bit about the device announcements. So the day before Mobile Congress starts, it's called basically Device Day, right? So that's where all the vendors make their announcements. So DJ Ko from Samsung announced the Galaxy S9 and S9 Plus. Juho Darvikas, Chief Product Officer from Nokia, announced the 8110, a 4G iPhone, and it also said that Nokia shipped 70 million handsets in 2017. They were moving a truckload of product. Richard Yu from Huawei talked about they launched a full view touchscreen notebook. Hagen Fendler from Alcatel talked about just how the new devices are focusing more on the features, etc. three more real quickly that I'll just get after. Vittoria Caleo, the CEO from Vodafone, talked about a concern of loss of jobs due to artificial intelligence and machine learning. Interesting. Christopher Young, so the CEO of McAfee, he said that they're discovering 600,000 unique threats a day. What a huge world these guys are in. I'm sure they're incredibly busy over there at McAfee. This is an interesting one for me. Hiroshi Mikitani, for CEO of Rakuten, he said that 76% of their revenue is actually comes from via mobile transactions. So, right, just how our world is changing, and those statistics are just going like this, obviously. Very, very last, I want to mention this. One of the big themes, and then I'm going to wrap up. One of the big themes from Mobile World Congress was SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. You can read about them if you just Google that. There's 17 different goals they're trying to do, and Sustainable Development Goals basically regarding using technology to make sure that we're not kind of polluting the environment and leaving a carbon footprint and all that stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that's about that, and there's a lot of stuff about inclusion and equality and equal pay and stuff like that. So Google that. There's some great stuff. Berit Svensson, the CEO of Telenor Norway, she talked about how companies need to kind of do extra things to help with the diversity, and just how well they have done in that. So I think they asked her to speak because Telenor Norway is kind of ahead of the game. And then Kathy Calvin, who's the CEO of the United Nations, talked about how the UN is focusing on the Sustainable Development Goals as well. So you guys, that was it. I tried to do my best to do this fast and kind of give you as much as much information as you can. I'll give you some money too, but as much information as I can in short order. For me, probably next is in the Silicon Valley is going to be smart cities, and then the IoT Expo. But until then, you guys, hope this was helpful, and I will see you next time. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.